would you call this section a verse or a chorus? It has the title in it, so it must be a chorus, right? Whether you said verse or chorus, are you able to tell me why? One of the most common mistakes I've seen in my years as a musician is the lack of understanding around song form. But I think for that reason, it's something people gloss over without even giving it a second thought, which can lead to some really problematic moments, especially as a player. It will certainly lead to you not getting a callback after an audition. And believe me, you do not want to be the kind of person that shows up to a rehearsal or a gig or a session and doesn't know the tunes. And if you're someone who wants to write music, this matters immensely. Understanding how song structure plays a role in the narrative itself is often the difference between a song sounding amateurish and a song sounding like the composer knows what they're doing. And if you're simply a music lover, having the correct terms to communicate with, especially if you're talking to musicians, is going to earn you respect from your peers. I'll make it known right off the bat that I'll only be covering modern song form in this video at its most basic level. There will be more videos expanding on this topic to come, like song form in regard to jazz and European classical music. Song form or song structure is defined as the arrangement and organization of a song's different sections, such as verses, choruses, bridges, and outros, to create a cohesive and engaging musical piece. In other words, song form is how a song is outlined. But really, song form is what helps us create a narrative in music. It's the arc of our story. Like good stories, good music is crafted on the model of tension and release. And this tension is defined by what's known as cadence. Cadence is a rhythmic sequence or flow of sounds in language. We use cadence constantly in our language. If I ask a question, there's an inflection in my voice that almost moves up in pitch at the end. This makes it sound like there needs to be a response to conclude it. What's a cadence? But if I ask that same question without the inquisitive inflection or cadence, it sounds more like a statement, a thought that is complete on its own. What's a cadence? It doesn't sound like there's a question mark at the end of that phrase, but rather a period. Within a song, we have sections. Within a section, we have systems. Within systems, we have measures. And within measures, we have phrases that are made up of notes. If a song is a full essay, then a section is a paragraph. Systems are sentences. Measures are parts of the sentence, and notes are words in the sentence. Music is very much a language, and it works the same way. Melodies and chord progressions are written with cadences, and sections use these to help tell the story. The antecedent phrase in music is equivalent to a question, and the consequent phrase is equivalent to the answer. The fourth movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony has a very clear question and answer in the melody. The antecedent phrase sounds like this. The consequent phrase sounds like this. I think this concept is pretty clear, even without the context of music theory. You don't need to know the key or the melody notes or the chord progression to understand how to hear the phrasing in a song. If I play just the antecedent phrase, it sounds like it's incomplete. And that does have to do with the note that's chosen to end the phrase, which is the second note in the scale. If you can't tell if something is consequent, sing it or play it by itself. If it feels incomplete on its own, it's an antecedent phrase. When I play the consequent phrase with it, it sounds like a complete musical thought. This is because this melody ends with the pitch moving to the tonal center or the first note in the scale. When we sort of zoom out on the phrases in a section, it sounds a lot like a conversation happening in another language. Using cadences effectively is more of a melodic and/or harmonic concept that I'll cover in separate videos. There are different types of cadences that work to create different qualities of tension and resolution. For now, this is a good way to identify different sections in a song. When it comes to song form, it's important to feel these phrases and recognize how long each one is. They are almost always in groups of 2 or 4 measures. If you're looking for help learning how to feel measures of 4, check out the last video I made. Let's look at the Pokémon Center theme from Pokémon Red and Blue and count the measures in each phrase. The Pokémon Center theme in particular starts with an antecedent phrase that is 4 measures long, and a consequent phrase that is 4 measures long. Together, they create an 8-measure section. You can hear the melody change significantly after those 8 measures. What I mean by that is a new motif is established. In music, a motif is a short, distinctive musical idea, usually melodic, rhythmic, or harmonic, that serves as a building block for larger musical structures. Composers typically establish a motif and then use it as a means to explore other musical ideas. Motifs are often repeated, reversed, mirrored, transposed, and used in lots of other creative ways. But that's yet another topic for another time. This is the motif in the first section, established in the very first phrase. You can hear it throughout the rest of the section as well. When those 8 bars are finished, we no longer hear that original motif. This means we've moved on to another idea, or a new section. See if you can hear a new motif in the second section. It's also established right away in the first phrase and used throughout. Can you pick out the antecedent and consequent phrases here? This is the antecedent, and this is the consequent. This time, they're each 2 measures long. The tension of measure 2 is resolved by measure 4, and the tension of measure 6 is resolved by measure 8. We then hear the melody return to what we heard in the first section, which tells us that this section is also a total of 8 measures long. The Pokémon Center theme has a total of 2 distinct sections that are 8 bars each, making the piece a total of 16 bars, which simply repeat over and over. Pieces like this one, which are short and sweet because of the technological limitations of the systems they were made for, are some of the most obvious examples of antecedent and consequent phrases, and often have some of the simplest types of song form. What we call these sections in a song like this one is up to interpretation. It's not clear which section is a verse or a chorus, and we don't have lyrical content to give us clues. So a piece like this would normally be marked by rehearsal marks, which are usually the letters of the alphabet, the first being A and the second being B. They can also be numbers. In short form, we'd call this an AB or binary song form, which tells us there are 2 distinct sections and they repeat. It would be your responsibility as a player to figure out and remember that there are 8 measures in each section. Let's look at another song with lyrics and see if we can establish the verse and chorus. I'll go back to the one we started with. Pop songs can still have an obvious question and answer structure, but it typically takes a little longer to get to the consequent phrase, such as Old Time Rock and Roll by Bob Seger. See if you can hear the antecedent and consequent phrases in this section.
Just take those old records off the shelf. I sit and listen to them by myself. Today's music ain't got the same soul. I like that old time rock and roll.
If this is the answer you got, you're correct. In the next section, he repeats the same exact melody, but with different lyrics.
Don't try to take me to a disco. You'll never even get me out on the floor. In 10 minutes I'll be late for the door. I like that old time rock and roll.
For this reason, these would be classified as the same section repeated. Let's call them A for now. So far, we have an A section that's 8 measures long, and it repeats once. Next, we have a new section. It may be harder to tell than it was in the Pokémon piece because the motifs aren't as clear. But listen for the antecedent and consequent phrases.
Still like that old time rock and roll. That kind of music just soothes my soul. I reminisce about the days of old with that old time rock and roll.
These are different enough that it doesn't sound like the A section, so we'll call this the B section. This B section actually begins on a consequent phrase, followed by 2 antecedent phrases, and then ending on a final consequent phrase. The B section is also 8 measures long. These are more or less the only 2 sections in this song, and each of these sections contain the title of the song. So how do we know which one is the verse and which one is the chorus? In general, music composition is structured in a particular way. A chorus is meant to be the main idea or feeling of the entire piece, a summary of why the song exists and what the songwriter ultimately wants you to take away from it. For that reason, this section is often repeated entirely, melodically, harmonically, and lyrically. It's typical for it to be emphasized musically as well, using the arrangement and elements like dynamics, rhythmic accenting, vocal harmonies, and so on. This makes the chorus feel bigger than the other parts of the song. This is to make it more memorable and drive the point home, which is why people often only know the chorus section of a song. And a verse is simply meant to give that main idea more context. This can also be established melodically, harmonically, or lyrically. In other words, the verse is usually what happened, and the chorus is how you feel about it. In songs like this one, for a casual listener, it's usually most obvious in the lyric content. For example, the B section says, "Still like that old-time rock and roll. That kind of music just soothes the soul. I reminisce about the days of old with that old-time rock and roll." And this more or less covers what the entire song is about, while the other sections describe mostly why he doesn't like other types of music. Additionally, I can tell this is the chorus because there are vocal harmonies used to thicken this section. There's rhythmic emphasis in the drums and piano. They also clue us into the chorus with the build at the end of the A section. And most evidently, this exact section repeats 5 times throughout the song. Now, all the songs we've looked at so far have had a very clear antecedent and consequent structure to them. But not every song is written that way. It's very common, especially in contemporary music, for songwriters to intentionally avoid a consequent phrase in order to build more tension. For example, check out the first section of Have You Ever Seen the Rain by Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Someone told me long ago, there's a calm before the storm. I know it's been coming for some time.
The first 2 phrases of the A section stand alone as independent musical thoughts because they end on the tonic. But the last phrase in the section feels unresolved because it ends on a note that is not the tonic. Imagine the song ended here.
It's been coming for some time.
You'd be a little confused. This section repeats once, but in the next section, both the melody and the harmony change, and we have short antecedent and consequent phrases.
I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain? I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain? Coming down Sunday.
Although the first 2 lines of this section do end on the tonic melodically, they don't do so harmonically. So we're still left feeling tense until the very last line, where we finally resolve to the tonic both melodically and harmonically. This theory detail may not be as clear to you as a listener, but you can still feel that these first 2 lines don't sound like the end of the thought, where the last line definitely does. Have You Ever Seen the Rain also has 2 distinct sections and would be considered an A-B or verse-chorus form. The A section is 8 bars and the B section is 12 bars. But which part of the song is the chorus and why? You may have guessed that, again, the B section is the chorus because 1, it resolves after building tension. 2, it's lyrically the point of the song. 3, there's rhythmic emphasis leading into it and a change in the rhythmic pattern to show emphasis. And 4, it repeats multiple times. Hopefully now you've got a pretty solid understanding of the difference between verse and chorus. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments. I don't want to make this video too long, so I'm going to make a part 2 that explains additional sections like pre-chorus and bridge very soon. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see that, And if you're really wanting to see that, consider becoming a patron for $5 a month, and you'll get early access to that and any other video I release. Thank you for watching.